Chapter 1 Introduction. Several friends suggested to me that I should get down in book form the various experiences I have had in my life. I was particularly exhorted to do this by Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, but I have maintained no diary or notes of the events of my life. The stories recorded in these pages were originally recounted by me to Messrs. Mason of Australia, Sri Devaraja Mudaliyar, Sri B.K. Shah, and several other friends on various occasions. I am no writer and make no pretense to literary gifts of any kind. My devotion to Bhagavan alone has urged me to record these experiences in my spiritual quest. I feel certain that he is guiding me as I set down a few of these personal memories. I shall feel amply rewarded if these pages serve to help and guide others in their quest for the true happiness that comes from the realization of the Spirit in man. Parentage. I was born in an affluent Parsi family well settled in what was then the Presidency of Bombay. My father had considerable properties in both Surat and Pune. My grandfather was an officer in the service of H.E.H., the Nizam of Hyderabad. My mother too joined the Nizam service. My father was the eldest son of his parents. He had a younger brother who passed away at a very young age. My mother was Shirin Bai, the daughter of Bikaji Patel. She was a very beautiful woman, blessed with long, luxurious black hair reaching down to her ankles and large black eyes. We were a large family, 5 sisters and 2 brothers, the eldest being my brother. I was born on 24th December 1898 in Hyderabad, Deccan, on the anniversary day of my grandmother, Piroja Patel, and was given her name. My childhood was on the whole uneventful, except that I seem to have been seriously ill in the very first year of my life, and to have survived the illness more through the devotion and prayers of my parents than through the skill of medical attendants of those days. My stay in Karachi. My father's aunt, his mother's sister, had married rather late in life a very rich gentleman of Karachi. Being childless, she asked my father to let me stay with her. I was accordingly brought up by her for quite a few years as her own child. I was admitted to a Gujarati school there, and my uncle and aunt had a great many plans for me, even for my marriage to a wealthy gentleman who later became a renowned Congress leader. Love has been the keynote of my existence in all my life. I feel this as a step towards heaven. Real poverty is not the poverty of material wealth, but the lack of love for fellow beings, the lack of kindliness according to me. Kind thoughts are of God and flow from Him. My love of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi himself was prompted not because he was a Jivan Mukta, but because he represented to me the very embodiment of love in its finest, purest and noblest aspects. My grandfather had a vast, spacious house rather like a fort. In this large ancestral house in Surat, my father, Krusha-e Modi, would rise to the music of the Nagara. My house was known as the house of the Khan Bahadurs. Simple, honest and straightforward, my father was well known for his integrity and character and faithfulness in carrying out the orders of his superiors while in service, and was most esteemed on this account. He was truthful, incorruptible, and absolutely honest in all his dealings. Deeply religious by nature, he was not only tolerant but respected other religions to the extent of helping financially in renovating dilapidated temples and mazars. He had varied experiences in his long life as a high official in the service of Nizam of Hyderabad. While on tour of the districts under his charge, my parents used a tonga since cars were unknown in those days. On one occasion, while father was on tour, he was passing through some jungle, and the orderly informed my father that a great Muslim saint was nearby, and inquired if he would like to visit him. Father, always punctual in keeping his appointments, did not like the idea of breaking his appointment with the patwaris and peshkas awaiting him at the place he had scheduled to visit, and refused to go to see the saint. But he had hardly proceeded about a mile further on when the tonga they were travelling broke down, inevitably causing delay in their onward journey. The orderly had to go to a nearby village to produce another tonga. My father then thought of calling on the Muslim saint the orderly had earlier spoken of. When my parents went to him, they were warmly received by the tall, white-haired, grave-looking saint. He greeted my father with the words, "You had to come even if you did not want to, as food had already been cooked for you." My mother was greatly attracted to this saint, who reminded her of Christ in his long loose robes and beard, and was greatly pleased to be told by the saint that she would be blessed with 5 children and she could meet several of God's good men in life, all of which has proved true. My sadhana put to a test. In his last days, my father was suffering from cancer. He was operated on by Dr. Parmar of Bombay. One day, the nurse attending on him suddenly wanted the doctor to be sent for urgently. It seemed to her that my father was going down fast after the operation. The good doctor, who was quite like a member of our family, confirmed the nurse's view on arrival. The thought then occurred to me in a flash that I should put my sadhana I had performed at Buddha Gaya for some years earlier to a test. I immediately took out my rosary and put it against my father's heart. Then I prayed in silence with eyes closed to the Lord Siddhartha, and within a few minutes father regained breath and pulse. The nurse told him that his daughter's prayers had revived him. My father embraced me and blessed me, saying that I was more a son than a daughter to him, and that I would achieve great things in life. Not only physically but in other aspects also, I resemble my father. Besides, I am quite a headstrong and impulsive type like my father. I hope I am as honest, straightforward and helpful as he. Father passed away 8 days later on the 6th January 1936 at the age of 68. My mother too gave me her blessings in similar terms towards the close of her life in February 1967. Perhaps these pages are more to my mother's blessings, for though friends pressed me to set down my experience as early as 1939, I was unable to do so till now. My father told my fiancé to hurry on with the wedding, and it came off on 14th March 1914. My sister-in-law, Mrs. Ma F.Taleyarkhan, became a great friend and nearly another mother to me. Some unkind facts overtook my father, and I had thereafter to look after my 2 sisters, one of whom got married in Bangalore to Dina Belgumwala. After my wedding, I was in great society, entertaining and moving about in high circles, but inwardly I was not quite happy, my mind being not quite at ease with this way of life. I would often spend some time just sitting quiet and in prayer. This mood of mine could never be appreciated either by my husband or by any of my relations. When I commenced my sadhana at Buddha Gaya in 1928 and later on came to Ramanasramam in 1937, the differences of outlook widened considerably. Although in society my friends were more loving, yet I was after inner freedom. Life is not meant to be hoarded. Life is meant to be given in love. My operation. Perhaps in 1947, I was having pains in my abdomen which did not respond to the homeopathic remedies administered by my friend Mr. Cohen. So, with Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi's permission, I went to Bangalore for examination and treatment at the Curzon Hospital there. Extra diagnosis revealed a big lump on the left side. My friends, Doctors Vanless and Weil, had warned me earlier that the disease was likely to recur and spread. The doctors at this hospital in Bangalore did not, however, take me into their confidence in the matter of the diagnosis, but were arranging among us themselves privately to perform another operation for the removal of this growth and were consulting my friend Sri Mirza Raza in that regard. Just about then, a letter from Sri Rajaji, then Governor General of India, was redirected to me from Tiruvannamalai, and in reply thereto I had informed him of my condition. So kind and solicitous of my welfare was Sri Rajaji that even when he occupied the highest position in India, he found time to write to the doctors in charge to bestow close attention on me, even as if he himself were the patient. The letter came to the notice of the then Diwan of Mysore, Sri A. Ramaswamy Mudaliar, and he visited me at the hospital. These factors made the doctors evince deep interest in my case. I was alone. None of my relations were at my bedside. This operation would be the eighth of a series of operations I had undergone in life. But the doctors encouraged me and made me feel quite at home in the hospital. Suspecting that I may have to undergo this operation, I wrote to Bhagavan praying to him to grant that I may close my eyes in peace rather than undergo this eighth operation of a series. When this letter reached Bhagavan, he read it as usual in the old hall, and there he made kind mention of me to the people present. According to Bhagavan's directions, Mauni, bless his soul, wrote to ask me to come back to Tiruvannamalai, assuring me that things would be all right. The Diwan and the doctors all assured me that the operation arranged to take place within the next 2 days would relieve me of my pain and that I could go back fit and healthy. I told them that I had decided against the operation and showed them the photo of Bhagavan which was on my table near the bed. He, I said, was my doctor, and that in accordance with his directions I would be returning to Tiruvannamalai without undergoing the operation. Dear reader, believe me that I, who for 10 days earlier could not retain any food, that day enjoyed toast and scrambled eggs without any pain or discomfort. That evening I attended a cinema show also with the matron of the hospital. When I approached the chief surgeon to take leave of him, he was pretty incredulous. He had again X-ray photos taken of me, but to his astonishment, they did not show the growth where it had been located previously. Assuring the doctors that I would place myself at their disposal for treatment in case of the recurrence of the trouble, I returned to the ashram. Bhagavan's gracious smile on the day I returned to the ashram is still a priceless treasure in my memory. Nearly 2 decades have passed since then, and I have not had any recurrence of this particular trouble so far. Miraculous cures like mine by Bhagavan, may I say in all humility, were not uncommon. Kalyana Kalpataru. Perfection is the keynote of yoga, says the Gita. In everything Bhagavan did, small or great, Bhagavan was ever perfect. Whether in effecting the cures as he did with me, or in the culinary art at which he was a specialist, or in proofreading, one could never find fault with anything Bhagavan did. So perfect was his work in all fields. Instances will recur to the memory of people who have known Bhagavan even slightly. I here recall 2 out of many within my knowledge. There was, however, no attempt at perfection. Perfection was quite natural to him. He would hardly permit the waste of even trifles. Every little bit of anything would be put to some use or other. His scrupulous care in handling any material he came across is worthy of emulation by us all. I saw Bhagavan arranging the back numbers of the delightful journal devoted to spiritual matters, Kalyana Kalpataru, and instructing Madhava to get them bound neatly. Madhava had been trained by Bhagavan in doing this work to perfection so as to be the envy of every professional binder. A few days later, I saw the neatly bound volume of this journal with Bhagavan expressing appreciation of the excellent work. I told Bhagavan of a set of copies with me of the same journal, which Bhagavan asked me to bring to him. He returned them to me handsomely bound a few days later. This volume, needless to say, is amongst my valued possessions. Precious presents from Bhagavan. Hard coconut shells are generally used in households as fuel and the ashes sometimes used for tooth powder. Bhagavan had other uses to put them to. He would take immense pains to clean up these strands of fiber on the shells, shape and polish the surface inside and out, and make ladles of them for use in the kitchen and for other purposes as well. I saw Bhagavan at such work with 2 shells, and a few days later found them turned into very beautiful cups. This type of work was almost a hobby and a passionate one with Bhagavan. One of these shells was big and the other somewhat smaller. He took 3 or 4 days to polish these cups to his satisfaction. I was praying to have it. Sensing my desire to have it, he passed the smaller one on to me. I was thinking, however, of the other one too, and although I never gave expression to my wish, he called me. "Oh, come here, take this," and gave the other one too to me. Again, possessions which I am never tired of showing to all my friends as the handiwork of Bhagavan, for whom no work was too small and all work was sacred. Close attention to detail, absence of hurry, perfection in every task attempted, and maximum utilization of every bit of an article characterized Bhagavan. Nothing escaped Bhagavan's notice, even though he had shed his mortal coil. He seemed to be always on the alert to comfort and console his numerous devotees, to wipe away the tears from their eyes. My loneliness after the Mahanirvana of Bhagavan. For over a week after Mahanirvana, I was quite desolate at missing the physical presence of Bhagavan, and I did not know quite what to do. Between tears, thoughts of ending this life often came to my mind. My husband too was no more then, and Bombay held no fascination for me. Bhagavan's personal assurance. It happened one afternoon as I lay asleep that I had a dream. I was standing in the veranda of my house and I saw Bhagavan come down the Arunachala hill with his walking stick and kamandalu, enter the veranda of my house by the side door. He came up to me and asked me, "Why are you weeping?" Tears welled up in my eyes as I said I missed Bhagavan too deeply for words. Bhagavan bade me wipe my tears, assuring me he was always with me here. Then he went out by the door opposite, crossing over the bodies of 3 or 4 people who were soundly asleep on the floor, whose identity to this day escapes me. This dream is yet vivid in my memory, and were I an artist, I would have drawn a picture of the scene. Bhagavan almost seemed to tell me that my place was at his ashram and my services in the interests of the ashram should continue. How can I tell my people that it is Bhagavan's will that makes me continue in residence here despite the troubles that face me constantly? Some Muslim servants of mine who had protested against my visits to either the shrine or the ashram of Bhagavan, or even prostrating to the photo of Bhagavan, have been granted the vision of Bhagavan, so that they not only do not protest any longer, but have themselves become devotees of Bhagavan. My husband's activities. Piroz, my husband, was the youngest of the family and was a very handsome, tall and highly cultured person. He was the proprietor of the weekly paper issued both in English and Gujarati called the Parsi, which he had to sell when we left for Bhopal. That paper was quite a popular one in the community and was noted for its advocacy of radical reforms such as cremation in preference to the Tower of Silence as a means of the disposal of the dead. There was considerable opposition to this move, so much so that his office was once the target of attack. But today, one finds the method commended by my husband is in greater use among us the community, and the opposition to it has fallen off considerably. It is true that any early reformer must face a certain amount of opposition for the cause he espouses. After Bhopal, he set up an investment advisor and was also engaged in the business of movie production. He was quite a success in both professions. Differences of opinion with my husband. With all his great qualities, his pet aversion was for sadhus in general and for the gerua, that is saffron-colored cloth in particular. We could never see eye to eye with each other on this matter. It was a special point with him to mark out the passages in the dailies reciting the crimes a sadhu was alleged to have committed. He greatly appreciated the social work I engaged in Bombay and elsewhere, but could never bring himself to agree to my visits either to Buddha Gaya or my association with any sadhu or to my frequent trips and long periods of residence in Ramanasramam. Retrospectively, I am inclined to think my husband was not far from right in this respect too. I think that if he had had a darshan of Bhagavan, he might have changed his view. I repeatedly invited him, and especially for the opening of the Sri Patala Lingam shrine, but he could not come as he was ill with sprue. He used to fall ill frequently. My husband's death. For a time after this function, I was getting every day sheafs of telegrams felicitating me on the function. On 22nd May 1949, a week after this function, as I was returning from the ashram towards the evening, feeling rather depressed as if a lump had stuck in my throat, I declined dinner and went to bed. A strange feeling was in me that my husband, Piroz, was peering at me through the mosquito curtain from all sides. This impression persisted in me till about 3 a.m. I had no taste for tea that morning either. A telegraph messenger came that morning with just one telegram instead of the usual bundle, and I had the premonition that it bode me no good. It did not either. The telegram was from my son Sorab. My beloved father departed this morning. This came to me as a shock, as I had no inkling until then either from my son or any member of my family that my husband was so seriously ill. Long after my husband's passing, I learnt with regret from my elder brother that the telegram prepared by Sorab to inform me of his critical condition was withheld by my sister Rhoda, presently in occupation of my Marine Drive residence, after taking it from him promising to send it herself. It was too late and purposeless to go to Bombay either. Miss Merston, that great, good and staunch friend of mine, now no more, missed me at my usual place in the ashram that morning and came to find out why. She had sensed that something must be seriously wrong with me for me to be absent at the ashram. She found me in bed unable to reply to her question. Then casting about the place, she found a telegram on the table. She felt upset by the way I had been treated by the family, and she informed Bhagavan. Bhagavan asked her to bring me over to the ashram. For 2 days I felt too deeply prostrated to be able to bring myself to go to the ashram, and the 3rd day Miss Merston insisted on my going after lunch to the ashram when Bhagavan would be alone. A few minutes after we reached the hall, Bhagavan entered. Words fail me to describe the compassionate look of Bhagavan when he looked at me. In his presence I could hardly check my copious tears. My husband had been sorry for my leaving the luxurious home, loving friends and servants. Above all, he could hardly bring himself to appreciate my devotion to Bhagavan. Indeed, I have often wondered whether I was right in acting as I did, in leaving a loving hearth and home, but ever found consolation in the words of Bhagavan. Everyone to himself or herself. Even when I was away from all, love and consideration did not diminish till this day. Although moving in high society, my husband was a strict teetotaler and avoided both drinks and cigarettes, as did also my brother-in-law. One incident in this connection seems worth narrating. Dr. Vandelus and Dr. Weil of the American Mission Hospital at Miraj were our great friends. These good men did a lot of service for the poor of our community, poor of our country. They treated my mother when she was seriously ill, and I was then just about 11 years old and a great favorite with Lady Vandelus. After my marriage, I would act as a sort of secretary to these doctors on their professional visits to Bombay when they would hold consultations at the Taj Hotel. They operated on me for cancer in 1926 in the left arm. While in Bombay, they would come and stay with me, and on one occasion, Dr. Weil, who knew that neither of us cared for drinks, asked us why we served drinks to our guests. He would not agree that we should serve drinks out of consideration for the habits of our guests, and told us that he served at his place only wine and no other drinks, and that it would be proper if we did not serve drinks at dinner at our residence. Sorab's birth. Sorab, my only son, was born in Bhopal in the year 1917. As the only son of well-to-do parents, he was the pet of his parents and has all that life could bestow on him. Even as an infant, he fell ill and we had to leave Bhopal for Pune and later for Bombay. As a boy, he loved me deeply until he became a graduate, and when he set up for himself in an independent career, somehow his feelings for me changed. Although outwardly he seemed just the wonderful fellow he always was. I was of course passionately fond of him, he being my only child. This turn in his nature worried me considerably. It is quite amazing how we run just after those things that kick us and turn our backs on the Lord, ever ready to receive us with open arms the moment we turn to Him. I can now look back and calmly feel that all these experiences were for my good only, as they deepened my spiritual quest despite the obstacles and rebuffs on this too. The greater the sufferings, the greater the experience. My passionate yearning to be freed from the weight of samsara was the first sign of true spiritual thirst. I was always thinking of what would happen to me if my mind and action went off the track. Therefore, it is that I am always on my guard and carry the load of my life through this world unattached and not caring for the play of Maya around me. My mind and thoughts are always centered on the One, while physically I am performing all kinds of actions. The key to my life lay in bhakti. Both work and knowledge held an entirely subordinate place to this in my life and thought. Even as a child, I was in search of God and met sages when with their grace suddenly I became indifferent to what I ate, slept in the open without any fear, and continued a life of severe austerities. Snakes, cobras became my friends, as readers will know that even Bhagavan vouched for this. First Lord Buddha and later Sri Ramana helped me considerably to acquire the dispassion so necessary for progress on the spiritual line. When I was at Ramanasramam, I had asked Sorab to keep in touch with me with regular weekly letters informing me in detail of the events at Bombay. But at times I would miss these letters for weeks on end. Once for nearly 6 weeks I had none from him. He was then holidaying in Jaipur as arranged by me for him with my friend Sheikh Govindram Saksaria. The postmaster, who was aware of my anxiety for these letters, would indicate to me while sitting in the old hall before Bhagavan that there was none through the window. My anxiety to hear from my son seemed to be sometimes reaching dimensions when it would no longer be bearable. Tears would flow from my eyes. Often I would pray silently to Bhagavan to remove this attachment that I felt for this son of mine. For had I not really friends around me as good as sons and daughters of my own? All over the world, the people sitting in front of Bhagavan in the hall were as good too. My prayer to be freed of this attachment and to cherish an intense love for all humanity was quite profound. With such prayer, I just closed my eyes in the presence of Bhagavan until the bell rang for lunch. Then I would walk out of the hall like a queen who had all her wishes fulfilled even before they had been expressed. This intense attachment I felt for Sorab soon vanished and did not trouble much thereafter. I never inquired of the postmaster for any letter for me from Sorab from then on. The thought that Sorab was mine vanished, and I felt that the real life is within oneself and that we live but in our thoughts and emotions. The figures to which we feel attachment, love or hatred come and go and are fleeting and evanescent. Our life is really independent of them. Duty, as we understand the word, is only slavery in the garb of virtue, a morbid attachment to the flesh, an absurd greed for gain or gold or some other worldly attachment. They have a duty to fulfill who consider that the world is real. This makes them stick to this relative life, subjecting themselves to the miseries of the world. When the moods, vrittis of the mind subside, when the mind is freed of its desires, the life as we know it loses its hold over us and the world takes on its true color and is seen to be what it is, ephemeral. Then comes true happiness, the ambrosia that drenches the parched throat like rain. We have then no duty to perform or anything to do in the world. This is only a state of consciousness and is not tangible when this change comes over our consciousness. The world too changes for us and we experience the soul for what it is, the reality that transcends all mundane existence.